Alright, ladies and gentlemen, so what we are going to be doing today is we're just going to do a little bit of a review and a little bit of an introduction of, once again, the Pythagorean theorem. So yesterday in class, we talked a little bit about the vocabulary behind the Pythagorean theorem. We talked about what is the Pythagorean theorem. And so today's review should be pretty easy, but I just want to make sure that you guys are touching on or highlighting the key things that we need to know to help us out with answering these questions. So once again, we are going to go over a little bit of vocabulary. We're going to go over a couple questions together, and what I need you to do and what I want you to do is, while we are going through this video, I want you to follow along with your note sheet. I want you to make sure that you are writing notes down and following along with me as we are going over these questions. If you need help and you need to review some of this stuff when I give you your homework, please make sure you refer back to this video. So like I said, the first thing that we're going to be going over here is just a little review. So this is under the title here of Let's Review. So once again, this is a review. Okay, which means that you should already know how to do these things and you should already know some of these answers. So it should be pretty easy to fill these blanks in. So question number 1, triangles have blank sides. Well, how many sides do triangles have? It says it in the name, tri, which simply just means 3. Number 2, a right triangle has one blank angle, which is marked by a little square. So if we think, once again, we have a right triangle, okay? And we know that it is marked by this little square in the corner. And we call that a 90-degree angle, which is also known as a right angle. And finally, number 3 for this slide, we have the two sides that form the right angle are known as the blank. So if we remember, we highlight or we label the triangle here side A, side B, and side C. And we know that A and B are known as the legs of the right triangle. For questions 4 and 5, we have two things here. We have a couple of things that we need to remember. So 4 is especially important, okay? So the blank is the longest side of the right triangle, and it is blank of the right angle. So once again, if I draw my right triangle here, okay, we know that it is marked by this little box in the corner, which once again means a 90-degree angle. We know that we have A, B, and C again, and we just said that A and B are the legs. So C, which is once again the longest side, has to be called or has to be known as the hypotenuse. Okay, so the hypotenuse is the longest side of the right triangle, and we also know that it is opposite of the right angle. So we put opposite in here. Okay, so when we get on to number 5 here, it says the Pythagorean theorem helps us find the blank side of a triangle. The whole point of this, ladies and gentlemen, is that the Pythagorean theorem helps us find the missing side of a right triangle. So we put missing here. So once again, this should have all been a review. Okay, these 5 things are as everything that you should have known or have reviewed from yesterday and have talked about yesterday. All right. So once again, triangles have 3 sides. A right triangle has one right angle, which is marked with a little square. 2 sides that form a right angle are known as the legs, which are side A and B. The hypotenuse is the longest side of the right triangle and is opposite of the right angle, and we all know that that is labeled side C. And the Pythagorean theorem helps us find the missing side of a right triangle. All right, ladies and gentlemen, so as we move on to the second part here, I really want to show you and walk through a couple of problems with you on how do we put the Pythagorean theorem into action and how do we find that missing angle or missing side length, as we find our C here. And what we're looking for here specifically in this question is once again the hypotenuse. And we label this side C because it's the longest side and it's opposite of the right angle. So once again, trying to find side C, which is known as the hypotenuse. If you look at this triangle, we have sides 3 and 4, and we know that the little m here stands for meters. So 3 meters and 4 meters, and we need to find that side length C again. So we need to use the Pythagorean theorem in order to help us here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to write out steps of this problem. I want you to follow along, and I want you to write them down as well. So I'll give you time to write this down, and I'll make sure that you follow along with me so you understand how to find your hypotenuse for this question. So the first thing that we need to do is we need to know what the Pythagorean theorem is. And once again, the Pythagorean theorem says that a squared plus b squared equals c squared. And all that simply means is we should know what side A is, and we should know what side B is, and we're still trying to find side C. So once again, we know that this is side A and this is side B. So we just plug that in here. I now know that this is 3 squared plus 4 squared equals c squared, because we don't know what c is. That's what we're looking for. So we need to simplify this a little bit. We need to figure out what is 3 squared, what is 4 squared. Well, 3 squared is 9, 4 squared is 16, and we still don't know what c squared is. Coming down to the last part of our problem here, we want to know what is 9 plus 16. 9 plus 16 is 25, and 25 still equals c squared. Well, big question here, ladies and gentlemen, is we're not trying to find what c squared is. We're trying to find out what c is. So how do I eliminate this square here? Well, what is the opposite of a square? That's what I need to think to myself. And the opposite of a square is simply a square root, and we have to do that to both sides. Since I now did that to both sides, I am left with c, and the square root of 25 is 5. So I know that the length of c is now going to be 5 meters. So as we look on to our next question here, ladies and gentlemen, we see that this is a little bit different of a triangle, but still we know that it is a right triangle because it is represented by that little square in the corner here. And we are also trying to find the missing length or the missing side length, which in this case, once again, is our hypotenuse, which is labeled by side C. We know now in this question, or with this triangle, we are talking about 15 yards and 8 yards as our side lengths that we know, and we have to do the exact same steps. So once again, knowing that the Pythagorean theorem says that a squared plus b squared equals c squared, we can plug everything in. Well, first of all, let's think, how do we know which side is which? Well, I know that this is side A, and I know that this is side B, and all I need to do is plug those in. So once again, A is 15, so now that's 15 squared. Side B is 8, so now that's 8 squared, and we don't know what c squared is because that is what we are looking for. Since these are larger numbers, you might need to use your calculator. And if you plug into your calculator 15 squared, you get 225. If you plug in your calculator 8 squared, you get 64. And once again, we do not know what c squared is. Well, if we plug these two things in, 125 plus 64, or 225 plus 64, we know that this equals 289. And 289 still equals c squared because we don't know what c squared is yet. Well, once again, we're not looking for c squared. We are just looking for c So I have to do the opposite of a square, which is a square root. And if I do it to one side, I have to do it to the other. And if you plug this into your calculator, and if you follow along with me here, ladies and gentlemen, we know that 289, or the square root of 289, is 17. So I can now say that 17 equals C, and I know that my answer here is 17 yards, making sure that I have my label. So last thing I want to do here is just a quick review, and these are the things I want you to leave with, all right? So there are no notes for this on your paper. There's just what we've talked about today. So once again, using the Pythagorean theorem to find the missing side. So once again, Pythagorean theorem tells us that a squared plus b squared equals c squared, all right? We know in a right triangle, okay, that the right triangle is marked with this little square in the corner, and that is a 90-degree angle. And we know that A and B are the legs of the right triangle that make up that right angle, and opposite of the right angle and the longest side of our triangle is labeled C. C is our hypotenuse, and in what you're going to be doing for your homework this afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, is you are trying to answer 4 questions that have to do with finding C, finding your hypotenuse. So using the Pythagorean theorem, plugging in for A, plugging in for B, right? Knowing that you're squaring both of those numbers. At the end, you're finding the square root to get C by itself and making sure you have a label, right? Once again, if you have questions, make sure that you ask the teacher. If you have questions and don't want to ask the teacher, you can always refer back to your note sheet. You can always refer back to this video as you go through some of those things. Thank you for watching. Thank you for following along, and I will see you guys later.